wisest person is the one who knows they know nothing. Indeed, in this life, wisdom does not lie in how much we know, but in our understanding of what is truly important to pursue, what should be held on to, and what should be let go. From ancient times, the profound teachings of our ancestors have always been an invaluable treasure of knowledge, helping people find peace, happiness, and sustainable success. There are those who spend their entire lives chasing knowledge and experience, yet sometimes they forget the simple but powerful life principles that our ancestors have painstakingly summarized and passed down through generations. Today, as society develops, we are more easily swept into the vortex of competition, rivalry, and the desire to prove ourselves. It is these pressures that cause us to lose the balance and tranquility in our minds. However, the miracle is that when we learn to live by the simple principles passed down by our ancestors, life becomes much lighter, more peaceful, and meaningful. In this video, we will explore 7 characteristics of extremely wise people, which our ancestors have summarized and taught over thousands of years. These are traits that are very familiar yet easily forgotten amid the hustle and bustle of modern life. Ask yourself, how many of these characteristics do you possess? And are you ready to open your heart to embrace and apply them in your life in order to seek true peace and happiness? Join me on a journey to reflect on and absorb these precious life philosophies so that we can live more fully and wisely. Each, do not compete. One of the most important characteristics that our ancestors often emphasized in the philosophy of wise living is not competing. At first glance, this may seem simple and easy to follow, but in reality, it is one of the most common mistakes many of us unknowingly make in our daily lives. We often fall into endless struggles, especially when faced with rare opportunities, or when confronted with injustice and the challenges that life brings. Why do we have the tendency to compete? In fact, this comes from the fear of loss and the greed to possess more than what we already have. When we see others succeed or possess something we desire, we often feel the urge to compete, to prove that we are superior or at least to attain something similar. This mindset throws us into the endless cycle of rivalry, thus losing the inner peace that we originally had. Our ancestors have a saying that beautifully reminds us of this: take one step back, and the sea is vast. The sky is wide. In fact, this saying is not just an ordinary piece of advice. It carries a deep implication about how we should behave in life. A truly wise person understands that it is not always necessary to fight for what we want, because what truly belongs to us will ultimately come to us. On the contrary, things that do not belong to us, no matter how fiercely we compete, will not stay with us forever. When we do not compete, we not only preserve our inner peace, but also conserve energy and focus to direct towards more meaningful pursuits. Imagine being engaged in a fierce competition with someone. Would you still have the time and mental energy to develop yourself and pursue your true dreams? In reality, competition often pulls us into matters beyond our control, wasting our energy on meaningless activities, and even causing harm to ourselves and those around us. A truly wise person knows when to move forward, when to stop, and even when to step back to gain a broader perspective on a situation. In life, this is sometimes a smart strategy that helps us not only recognize the essence of the matter, but also avoid many unfortunate consequences that may arise from unnecessary competition. Let's take a look at those around us, those who constantly compete fiercely, trying to win at any cost. What do they ultimately gain? Perhaps immediate accomplishments, but with them come pressure, stress, and constant exhaustion. In contrast, those who know how to withdraw at the right time, who maintain stillness and calm in the face of competition, often achieve more sustainable, happier, and long-term results. A wise person knows that tranquility is not a sign of weakness, but the clearest manifestation of inner strength. They do not need to prove anything to anyone, nor do they need to surpass others to feel valuable. They understand their own worth and know that everyone has their own unique journey. This realization helps them maintain peace, and this peace becomes the invaluable source of strength that helps them progress further on their path. Furthermore, when we do not compete, we reduce unnecessary conflicts in our relationships. A life free from conflicts and envy will be far more peaceful and joyful. When you no longer view life as a battle that must be won, you will begin to appreciate the simple, genuine joy that comes from the smallest things and from being content with yourself. Looking at the bigger picture, not competing also means accepting the natural flow of life. Sometimes what you do not achieve at this moment does not mean you will never have it. Patience and calmly waiting for the right time is what truly matters. Often what you thought you lost will, one day, return to you in a better and more surprising way. Finally, remember that life is not a ruthless race where the first one wins. It is a journey of experience, of enjoyment, and of growth. The wise person knows how to take time to listen to their heart, to recognize what is truly meaningful and important, and from there, to choose the right path without getting caught up in futile competitions. Try applying the do not compete philosophy to your life, even in just a few simple situations. You will find that letting go sometimes is the best way to achieve everything you truly desire. Finally, remember, tranquility and patience are not only strengths but also a long-term strategy that will lead you to lasting success and true peace. Do not boast. In modern society, boasting about one's success, wealth, or personal prominence seems to have become a common habit. Especially in the era of social media, where people can easily share their successful moments, from luxurious trips to impressive achievements. However, boasting is not just an act of proving one's worth. It also hides unpredictable consequences, causing many people to pay the price by losing relationships and respect from those around them. Therefore, wise people often understand that boasting is not the only way to prove their worth. Boasting and arrogance. Boasting, whether intentional or not, often comes from a deep-seated need in everyone, the desire for recognition, to be praised, for one's achievements or success. The ego of every individual needs validation, and sometimes people feel that only by showing off what they have can they be acknowledged and valued by society. However, this can backfire. The more you flaunt, the easier it is to lose. This saying from our ancestors serves as a warning about the dangers of boasting. When you boast too much, you not only make others feel inferior or envious, but sometimes you also lose the respect of those around you. They may feel that you are no longer humble, no longer yourself, but just an empty show-off image. Boasting not only harms the spirit, but also causes you to constantly worry about maintaining your image, preventing you from living freely and comfortably, burdened by the anxiety of being judged. One of the philosophies of Socrates, one of the greatest philosophers of the West, is, "A truly wise person is the one who knows that they know nothing." When you boast, you're essentially saying that you know everything, that you are the best. This boasting not only contradicts humility, but also makes you miss the opportunity to learn from others. Socrates believed that only when we realize we do not know everything can we open our hearts to learn and grow. A wise person does not need to boast because they understand that true respect does not come from showing off achievements, but from their actions and character. Warnings from the consequences of boasting. Boasting can lead to jealousy, and when jealousy arises, it will destroy the relationships you have built. If you boast too much about your wealth, success, or possessions, others may feel pressured, inferior, or even think that they are not as good as you. This not only damages relationships but also causes you to face alienation and lack of respect from those you once thought would be your friends. True respect comes from how you treat others, not from what you have. This saying from Aristotle, a famous Greek philosopher, is the clearest proof of the wise person's philosophy of life. Respect cannot be bought with flaunting wealth or accomplishments. It comes from humility, from your actions toward others, and from how you behave in difficult situations. When you boast, you are simply trying to prove yourself, but in reality, this only diminishes your value in the eyes of others. No one can live a truly happy life when they are confined by the need to maintain a boastful image. You will always worry about how others will judge you if you can no longer keep that image, and in those moments you lose the freedom and peace of mind you could have had. The virtue and benefits of humility. A wise person understands that humility is a priceless virtue. They do not need to prove anything because they know that real value does not lie in what they have, but in how they treat life and those around them. They live a simple life, not boasting, always focusing on self-development, learning, and working hard. Humility is the key to greatness. This saying from Confucius represents one of the key philosophies of the wise. When you are humble, you not only learn from others, but also earn true respect from everyone. Humility helps you maintain good relationships, create space for growth and progress in life, and moreover, when you are humble, you no longer have to worry about boasting or maintaining an image, because you have found peace within yourself. Life is not always about a race to show off. A wise person understands that self-worth does not need to be flaunted or proven to others. They know that respect, love, and enduring relationships will be built through their virtues and actions, not through boasting. Remember, boasting is not the only way to prove your worth. Humility is the key to gaining lasting respect. A wise person understands that they do not need to prove themselves, but rather, let their actions and character speak for themselves. Therefore, instead of boasting, focus on personal development, live humbly, and let your achievements speak for your value. Boasting only distances you from peace in life. When you learn humility, you will realize that your true value is not in what you have, but in who you are. Do not argue. Life is full of moments of disagreement. Everyone has their own perspective and view of the world, and we do not always easily agree with one another. When faced with a disagreement, we tend to want to defend our point of view by arguing, sometimes with strong reasoning. However, arguing is not always the best way to resolve a situation. In fact, in heated debates, if we do not know when to stop, we may end up harming relationships and only increasing tension without achieving any results. The wise person understands that arguing is not always an effective solution. They know when to stay silent and when to speak. Arguing, a fruitless confrontation. Arguing is not only a clash of reasoning, but sometimes also a battle of egos, a struggle to prove that we are right. While arguing, we might feel victorious when the other person remains silent or changes their view. But does that victory really bring peace and happiness to our souls? The wise person knows that the goal is not to win or lose, but to find harmony, mutual understanding, and agreement. Sometimes, silence is the wisest answer. This saying from Marcus Aurelius, one of the famous Roman emperors, is also a very deep life philosophy. Silence is not weakness. It is a wise choice when we realize that continuing the argument does not lead to positive results. Words can hurt, reasoning can create tension and damage relationships. The wise person chooses silence when they recognize that their silence will help maintain calm and prevent hasty words that might damage long-term relationships. Arguing is often a way of defending our ego. In life, when others disagree with us, instead of arguing, a wiser approach is to listen and try to understand their perspective. When you cannot change others, what you can do is change how you respond. This quote from Epictetus, a famous Stoic philosopher, emphasizes the importance of self-control and responding calmly to difficult situations. In an argument, you may not change the other person's viewpoint, but you can change how you react. Calmness and silence are sometimes the wisest choice. Consequences of arguing. Arguing does not always lead to good outcomes. In fact, when an argument drags on without resolving anything, things only become more complicated and may even damage the relationship between the participants. The more we try to defend our perspective, the more we make the situation tense, and instead of helping the other person understand us, we may push them away. Every argument, especially when it cannot reach consensus, is a battle without a winner. An extended argument only exhausts both sides. This quote from Thomas Carlyle, an English writer and philosopher, shows that arguing is not an effective problem-solving method. It just creates unnecessary exhaustion and tension. Moreover, during an argument, we may fall into a vortex of harsh words which can hurt others and have long-lasting effects on relationships. Instead of focusing on proving ourselves right, listening and respecting the other person's views will help make the situation more manageable and easier to resolve. The wise person is not the one who always wins in an argument, but the one who knows when to remain silent. This philosophy from Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher and author of the Tao Te Ching, emphasizes that silence is not losing. Rather, it is the wisest choice when we recognize that the argument will not bring a positive outcome. Silence, in many cases, is not defeat but the smartest way to avoid unnecessary conflict. Silence, the strength of the wise. Silence is not surrender, it is self-control. When we choose silence, we are demonstrating mastery over ourselves and a deep understanding of the nature of the situation. Silence helps us avoid getting caught up in futile arguments, keeps our minds calm, and enables us to view things with clarity. Silence is the strength of the wise. This quote from Buddha reflects the philosophy of those with great wisdom, those who know when to speak and when to remain silent in order to avoid escalating conflict. In reality, the wise person knows that in many cases, silence is the way to protect both themselves and others from unnecessary harm. By not engaging in a pointless debate, they preserve calmness and avoid getting caught up in anger or feelings of loss of control. And when everything around is noisy with arguments, the wise person knows how to stand aside and assess things with a clear mind. Reason and emotion in arguments. An argument is not always just about reason. Sometimes in debates, emotions take precedence over logic. When caught up in emotions, we may easily say thoughtless things that hurt others and damage relationships. Arguments will never achieve a positive result if we cannot control our emotions. Reason cannot conquer emotion. This quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, stresses that when emotion and reason are not in harmony, reason will not prevail. In life, when dealing with people with strong emotions, sometimes we need to hold back our own feelings and understand that reason cannot always convince the other person. Therefore, remaining silent in such situations not only helps maintain peace but also helps us maintain respect for one another. This life is not always a battle of logic. The wise person understands that sometimes silence is the best way to resolve a situation. Arguing is not always the best solution, and at times it only worsens the situation. By refraining from engaging in pointless arguments, we not only protect ourselves from harm but also help preserve peace and tranquility in our hearts. As Socrates once said, "The wise do not argue. The fool does not know when to remain silent." Silence is an art that the wise know how to apply at the right moment to find agreement and maintain good relationships. Silence is not weakness. It is a wise choice, self-control, and understanding in a world full of noise and debate. 4. Do not be arrogant. Arrogance is one of the undesirable traits that no one wants in life. However, it is often easy to let it sneak into our hearts without realizing it. When we feel superior to others, when success comes our way, we might lose control of our arrogance and start seeing ourselves as special, better than everyone else. Arrogance not only makes us prideful but also harms our relationships, preventing us from learning and growing. Therefore, the wise person understands that arrogance is a major obstacle on the path to personal development and long-term success. Arrogance and its consequences. Arrogance can be understood as an inflated view of oneself, seeing oneself as the center of the universe, thinking that one is always right and cannot be wrong. When arrogant, we may lack humility and even look down on others. This not only damages relationships, but also prevents us from accepting advice, feedback, and help from others. When a person no longer knows humility, their career will gradually decline. This quote from Confucius is a valuable lesson about humility in life. The wise person always understands that humility is a strength, helping them maintain good relationships and continuously develop. Arrogance is often built on a lack of understanding about the nature of success. The arrogant person believes their success is due to their own exceptional abilities, forgetting that true success is the result of relentless effort, help from others, and many factors beyond their control. When you think you are the best, you stop learning. This quote from Albert Einstein highlights that when we become complacent with our success, we lose the motivation to keep learning. Arrogance stops us from improving ourselves and leaves us stagnating. Even though we may have achieved some accomplishments, if we don't remain humble and continue learning, we cannot progress further. Warnings from successful people. Most of the successful people throughout history share one common trait: humility. These individuals understand that no matter how many achievements they reach, they are still students of life. Arrogance is the greatest enemy of success. This quote from Napoleon Bonaparte emphasizes that arrogance not only hinders personal progress but also becomes a significant barrier to lasting success. Napoleon, despite being a great strategist, saw his empire ultimately collapse due to his arrogance. Napoleon's story vividly demonstrates that arrogance can destroy everything if left unchecked. Moreover, arrogance can cause us to overlook valuable opportunities to learn from others. An arrogant person always assumes they know everything, and they are unwilling to listen or accept feedback from others. An arrogant person will never learn because they believe they know everything. This quote from Socrates underscores that not being humble strips us of our ability to learn and grow. The wise person understands that learning is an ongoing process, and no matter how skilled you are, there is always something new to discover. Humility, the key to growth. Humility is the key that helps us maintain progress and respect from those around us. The wise person knows that they do not need to flaunt their success because real value does not lie in what they achieve, but in how they treat others. Humility is the crown that only the deserving can wear. This quote from William Shakespeare is a reminder that humility is a precious quality, and only truly great people can possess it. Humility not only helps us build good relationships with others, but also helps us become people worth admiring. In every situation, the humble person knows they are not perfect and are always ready to learn from others. They never stop seeking opportunities to improve themselves, and this humility helps them become better every day. Humility is the key to greatness. This quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson affirms that humility is not just a moral quality, but also an essential factor for continuous development. The wise person always realizes that nothing is perfect, and humility is the way to maintain progress in life. Learning to listen and acknowledge mistakes. Arrogance not only prevents us from learning from others, but also keeps us from recognizing our own mistakes. The arrogant person fails to see their own weaknesses because they always believe they are right. But in reality, when we cannot recognize our mistakes, we cannot grow and improve. Arrogance is the cause of all failure. This quote from Thomas Carlyle shows that arrogance can lead to failure in various aspects, from career to relationships. The wise person knows that acknowledging mistakes and learning from them is an essential part of personal growth. Humility helps us recognize and accept that we are not perfect, thereby finding opportunities for improvement. No one is perfect, but everyone can learn. This life philosophy taught by Aristotle encourages us that, when humble, we not only recognize our mistakes but also find opportunities to become better. Arrogance is a hidden enemy in life. It makes us lose humility, stop learning, and can destroy important relationships. The wise person understands that true value lies not in what they have or their achievements, but in how they treat others and their constant ability to learn. Humility is the quality that helps us maintain respect from others and opens up continuous opportunities for growth. Always remember, only humility can help us maintain true greatness. Do not over-explain. In life, we sometimes find ourselves in situations where the feeling of being misunderstood seems unavoidable. There are times when our actions or words are misinterpreted by others, and this creates significant psychological pressure. In such moments, we often have the tendency to explain everything in order for others to understand us correctly. However, the wise person understands that not every situation requires an explanation, and sometimes trying to explain only complicates the matter further. Explaining. Is it truly necessary? When we try to explain, we often believe that the goal is to clarify the truth for others to understand us correctly. However, in reality, Attempting to explain is not always going to yield positive results. When faced with people who are unwilling to listen or unable to comprehend, every explanation is just wasted breath. There is no need to explain to those who do not understand you. This quote from Confucius reflects a very deep philosophy. If others do not wish to understand you or cannot understand you, then explaining is a pointless battle you will never win. In this case, silence may be the wiser choice. Many times we feel insecure when we are misunderstood. But instead of rushing to explain, we should recognize that those who truly care and respect us will naturally understand the things we do or say. Those who truly love you do not need you to explain, and those who do not love you will never understand you, no matter how much you explain. This quote from Confucius also presents a clear view of relationships. Those who truly care for you will always understand the essence and reasons behind your actions, even if you do not explain much. Those who do not truly care will not change their views, no matter how much you try to explain. Trying to explain only makes things more complicated. One of the reasons we often try to explain is the feeling that we need to clarify the truth and prove that we are not wrong. However, in many situations, explaining does not just fail to help, but it makes the situation more tangled and uncomfortable. The more we explain, the more we fall into an endless cycle of debates that lead nowhere. The more you explain, the more complicated everything becomes. This quote from Albert Einstein highlights that sometimes, the more we try to explain, the more difficult and harder it becomes to resolve the issue. Trying to prove ourselves right can make both parties feel exhausted and frustrated, and in the end, the situation will remain unresolved, only getting more tangled. In a debate or when misunderstood, the wise person will not engage in endless explanations but instead knows when to remain silent and let things resolve on their own. Silence is a wise choice when explaining no longer works. This is one of the important life philosophies taught by Socrates, that silence is not defeat, but a wise choice when we recognize that explanations are not bringing positive results. Choosing silence not only helps protect oneself from unnecessary arguments but also helps preserve calmness and a clear mind. Explaining when and when not to. Although there are times when we should stay silent, not every explanation is a mistake. However, what's crucial is knowing when to explain and when not to. The wise person understands that an explanation is truly necessary only in situations where misunderstanding can lead to severe consequences or harm relationships. However, if explaining will not change the other person's perspective or if the listener is not willing to listen, continuing to explain is futile and will only make the situation worse. Not everyone can understand you, and not everyone is worth you explaining yourself to. This quote from Buddha reflects a profound philosophy. Everyone has a different way of perceiving the world, and sometimes people who do not understand you, no matter how much you explain, will not change their mind. At times, silence is the best answer you can choose as it allows you to maintain peace and not let personal emotions overly influence your decisions. Silence, confidence in yourself. Silence is not only a way to avoid unnecessary arguments, but also a sign of self-confidence. The wise person does not need to explain everything because they are confident in what they do and the values they bring. Silence is proof of self-confidence. This quote from Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, emphasizes that confident people do not feel the need to prove themselves through words. Confidence comes from the heart, from actions, and from actual results. The wise person understands that they do not need to explain every action they take, because the results will speak for themselves. When we choose silence instead of explaining, we demonstrate self-control and do not let emotions or the judgments of others affect our peace of mind. Only when you understand and have confidence in yourself can you remain silent in difficult situations. This quote from Mahatma Gandhi is also a reminder that self-confidence and self-awareness are the keys that allow us to avoid unnecessary debates. Freedom and peace in silence. Explaining too much can make us feel trapped in maintaining a particular image or establishing a certain point of view. When we do not need to explain, we will feel freer and more peaceful. Silence is a way to free the soul from unnecessary burdens. This quote from Mahatma Gandhi shows that silence not only helps us avoid pointless arguments, but also helps us live freely, not controlled by what others think of us. The wise person understands that life does not always require an explanation for every action. True freedom comes from living with oneself, trusting in what we believe, and not worrying about what others think. Explaining will not change the world, but your actions will. This quote from Mahatma Gandhi again highlights that actions and results speak louder than words, and we do not always need to explain to those who do not understand. Life does not always require us to explain everything. The wise person understands that silence in many situations is a wise choice because, sometimes, explaining not only fails to help, but also makes the situation more complicated. Explaining does not always bring the results we expect, especially when the person we are explaining to is unwilling to listen or understand. Learn to recognize that not everyone needs to understand you, and sometimes silence is the strongest and most confident answer you can give. Do not demand too much. Modern life often leads us into the trap of endless ambition, constantly wanting more success, more achievements, more wealth, more. However, according to the philosophy of the wise, not demanding too much is the key to living a peaceful and happy life. The knowing enough and appreciating what we have not only helps reduce stress, but also opens up a meaningful life, free from the spiral of ambition and deprivation. We often hear that ambition is a driving force that helps people move forward. And indeed, ambition can be a factor driving careers, personal growth, and positive changes in society. However, when ambition becomes an excessive demand, when it is left uncontrolled, it turns into something negative, pulling us away from true peace and happiness. The price of excessive ambition is an unsettled soul. This quote from Seneca, a famous Stoic philosopher, emphasizes that endless ambition can cause us to lose our inner peace. When we constantly demand more from life, we never feel satisfied with what we have. Life becomes a race with no finish line, and each time we achieve one goal, we push for even higher demands, making ourselves feel perpetually deprived and never enough. Moreover, excessive ambition makes us overlook the important things in life, the simple joys, the small moments of happiness we can enjoy every day. When we focus too much on achieving great goals, we may lose the ability to appreciate and cherish the simple things in life. Those who chase big dreams without appreciating the small things will always feel empty. This quote from Epictetus, a great Stoic philosopher, emphasizes that we must learn to accept and enjoy the small, simple things in life, instead of constantly chasing unattainable goals. Knowing enough is happiness. The concept of knowing enough is a simple yet profound life philosophy that the wise practice in their daily lives. When you know enough, you no longer feel deprived, no longer running after endless goals, and most importantly, you find peace and contentment in what you already have. Knowing enough is happiness. This famous quote from Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, is one of the most important lessons that help us live peacefully. When you know enough, you no longer feel stressed or pressured by what you have not yet achieved, but instead you experience satisfaction and fulfillment with what you already possess. Happiness does not come from having more, but from appreciating what we already have. Imagine, if you are always demanding more, do you have time to enjoy the joy of the simple things in life? If we constantly chase endless desires and never feel enough, we will always feel deprived, and this will never bring true happiness. The wise do not demand too much. The wise person is not someone without goals or ambition. They know how to set reasonable goals and not demand too much. They understand that everything in life has its limits, and not everything will go according to their wishes. When you understand that you cannot control everything, you will find peace in life. This quote from Epictetus emphasizes that peace comes from accepting that not everything will go as we wish. The wise person understands that they cannot have everything in life, so they know how to adjust their expectations to avoid disappointment. True happiness comes from appreciating the simple things. One of the most important lessons the wise practice is learning to appreciate the simple things in life. Small things, genuine moments, often bring deeper happiness than the great successes or things we pursue. Happiness does not come from what we have, but from how we live and appreciate what we have. This quote from Marcus Aurelius, one of the famous Roman emperors, shows that true happiness does not come from material possessions or unexpected achievements, but from how we live and appreciate life each day. When we learn to appreciate the small things, we will feel happy with what we already have and no longer feel deprived or lacking. The peaceful mornings, warm conversations with loved ones, relaxing moments in nature, all of these are wonderful. Things that we can enjoy as long as we know enough and appreciate them. Although ambition is an important factor in achieving success when uncontrolled, it can become a trap. It makes us always feel inadequate, never satisfied with what we have. Excessive ambition can kill your happiness. This warning from Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American writer and philosopher, shows that endless ambition can cause us to lose peace of mind. When we fail to be satisfied with what we have achieved, we will always feel deprived and unable to live happily. Therefore, not demanding too much is the key to maintaining satisfaction and peace in life and finding true happiness. 7. Know when to let go. Life is always filled with challenges, loss, and inevitable changes. In difficult times, we may have to face events or relationships that no longer bring value to us. However, one of the most important lessons that the wise understand is knowing when to let go. This is not about giving up or failure, but about freeing the soul from unnecessary burdens so we can open our hearts to new opportunities, new people, and new experiences in life. Letting go is an art of living that helps us release old relationships, past failures, and unrealistic expectations. Letting go is the art of freeing ourselves from burdens and finding peace. This quote from Buddha reflects one of the deepest philosophies about liberating oneself from things that no longer serve us. Life does not always unfold the way we want, and we cannot control everything. Sometimes persistence in holding on to things that no longer have value only causes us more exhaustion and suffering. Letting go is a powerful act, a wise choice to release suffering and allow ourselves to move forward. Letting go is not always easy. However, letting go is not always easy, especially when it involves important relationships, missed opportunities, or long-held expectations about the future. But if we do not know how to let go, we will remain stuck in the past and unable to move forward. Not letting go is to bind oneself. This quote from Epictetus, a famous Stoic philosopher, emphasizes that when we do not know how to let go, we tie ourselves to anxieties, past failures, and prevent ourselves from creating new opportunities for the future. Letting go is not just a physical act, but also a transformation of the soul. When we let go, we not only free ourselves from unhealthy relationships or things we no longer need, but we also cleanse our minds and emotions. When you know how to let go, you will find freedom in your soul. This quote from Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, affirms that letting go helps us free ourselves from emotional and psychological burdens, enabling us to live a life of freedom without being controlled by things beyond our control. Letting go of things we cannot change. There are things in life that we cannot change, events that have passed that we cannot undo. Letting go is the acceptance that not everything will go according to our will. Only when you let go can you embrace new opportunities. This quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson suggests that knowing when to let go opens up new opportunities and experiences for us, allowing us to move forward with life rather than being stuck in what no longer serves us. Life is constantly moving, and in order to keep up, we must learn to let go of things that are no longer useful so that we do not remain trapped in old ways. Letting go in relationships. One of the most important aspects of letting go is in relationships. We often cling to relationships that are no longer healthy, relationships that have run their course and no longer bring us happiness, especially in friendships or love. We may continue to maintain a relationship out of habit or fear of losing an important person. However, the wise understand that relationships that no longer bring us happiness will only cause more pain, and letting go is not about failure, but about necessary liberation. Relationships that no longer bring you happiness are the ones that need to be let go. This advice from Seneca, a famous Stoic philosopher, highlights that toxic or unhelpful relationships will only drag us down, preventing us from growing. Letting go of a relationship does not mean abandoning love or care. It means allowing both parties to seek happiness and peace on their own. The wise understand that a good relationship must be built on mutual respect, love, and support. And when those elements are no longer present, letting go is the best way to free both individuals. Letting go of unrealistic expectations. One of the things we need to learn to let go of is unrealistic expectations of ourselves and life. We often set overly high expectations for ourselves, for others, and for life. And when these expectations are not met, we easily fall into disappointment and frustration. Unrealistic expectations are the root of all disappointment. This reminder from Confucius teaches us that excessive expectations do not always lead to success but often lead to disappointment and prevent us from enjoying life. The wise person understands that reasonable expectations and accepting reality are the keys to living peacefully and happily. Imagine if you always demand too much from yourself and others, you will feel exhausted and never satisfied. Letting go of unrealistic expectations helps us view life more optimistically and enjoy the simple things we have. Do not let expectations blind you to the joy in small things. This advice from Aristotle emphasizes that life is truly valuable when we appreciate the small things instead of only chasing unrealistic expectations. Letting go to find peace. Knowing when to let go is one of the most important keys to finding peace in life. When we let go of things that no longer serve us, we create space for peace and happiness to enter our lives. Peace comes from letting go of unnecessary burdens. This quote from Dalai Lama reminds us that we can only find peace when we stop clinging to things that weigh down our soul and create anxiety. Life does not always unfold the way we expect, and sometimes we face failure, loss, or relationships that no longer bring us joy. But when we know how to let go, we not only free ourselves from suffering but also open up the possibility of starting anew, learning, and growing. Letting go is not failure, but growth. This life philosophy from Mahatma Gandhi stresses that when we let go of things that no longer hold value, we become more mature and open to a new chapter in life. Knowing when to let go is not easy, but it is an art of living that helps us release ourselves from things that no longer serve us. The wise person understands that letting go is not about giving up, but about liberation, allowing us to open our hearts to new opportunities. When we know how to let go, we will find peace and true happiness, no longer bound by the past. Letting go is the way to live freely and grow, continuing to move forward in life. Through the lessons of life, philosophy passed down by our ancestors, we realize that life is not simply about achieving goals or acquiring what we want. In fact, life is about seeking peace, happiness, and satisfaction with what we already have. Principles such as do not compete, do not boast, do not be arrogant, do not over-explain, do not demand too much, and know when to let go are the keys to living a peaceful and meaningful life. The wise do not need to prove themselves to the world, but live confidently in humility and listening. They understand that true success does not come from competing or boasting, but from patience, stillness, and the ability to focus on their goals without being caught in pointless races. When we do not demand too much and learn to appreciate what we have, we will realize that true happiness comes from the simple things in life, not from material possessions or achievements. Letting go is one of the most important philosophies for achieving peace in life. When we no longer cling to the past, hold on to relationships that no longer serve us, or harbor unrealistic expectations, we can open our hearts to new opportunities, positive changes, and live a fuller life. Letting go is not about giving up, but about liberation, allowing us to move forward freely and lightly. As Socrates once said, "A person cannot find true happiness unless they know who they are and live according to their true nature." This philosophy reminds us that peace can only be attained when we live in alignment with our authentic selves, without comparison or trying to meet external expectations. Always remember that life is not a race, but a journey to find harmony between our soul and the world around us.